Good morning, goeiemôre. Dumelang, Friday always a nice day to see young faces. En hier op die spoorwegkant van die paviljoen, ook jong mense, bietjie meer ondervinding, maar steeds jonk. Thank you for being here on a Friday. It seems that rain is on its way. So enjoy the morning. We have an excellent panel. Wandile, thank you for leading it, and I look forward to everybody's contribution. Nation in Conversation is 10 years old this year. It's become a major content provider for the media and to, in the mind of Joe Public, it's really positioned our value chains. We're privileged to have Jan de Villiers here this morning and his wife. Welcome. You'll always be a friend of Agri. The first year we started, Jannie, you remember you immediately said yes, we could start this, and the location has just grew and the platform has grew. So also time to thank the crew of Brand Republic, the whole crew, everybody that was involved. You excelled yourself. Every year is better, and indeed this year you again outdone yourself. All our panel members, Theo Foster, who's become almost a voice of Agri over time, and my own marketing team, who's worked exceptionally hard, despite some harsh comments that I hear. So just take it from where it comes. Ronel, you the mainstay. Thank you. You've outdone yourself. Enjoy it. So we're going to listen to a short introductory video, and then Jannie, the stage is yours.
A nation's future lies with its youth. It's the responsibility of those with the economic and political power to motivate and empower the youth to embrace the current opportunities and to create their own legacies.
For me, when I first started studying agriculture, I thought of it as being quite simplistic and easy. But as I went into depth into the studies, I realized that agriculture is actually so diverse. Even within economics, there's so many aspects to it. You can really choose so many fields that you want to go into.
A recent study by Dr. Candace Klutter, Senior Analyst at the Bureau for Food and Agricultural Policy, showed that 20% of South African commercial farmers are planning to leave the industry in the next decade. Considering the average age of the South African farmer, this is not surprising. It's also in line with international trends. The result is that a growing population will rely on fewer producers of food, who will have to grow increasingly efficient using technologies. This also creates an opportunity for a younger generation to step into this important sector.
So I think for all the young people out there thinking of what to become or what to study, agriculture is really exciting. That's where life starts. That starts at agriculture. You need to eat 3 times every day, and that all comes from a farm and out of agriculture.
There is a perception among some young people that agriculture isn't a lucrative career choice. The agricultural sector is, however, such a diverse sector that it requires a wide variety of skills from different people, from scientists, economists, veterinarians, technicians, and agronomists to marketers, lawyers, and human resources professionals. There are many roads a young person can take to become involved in agriculture. Having access to land is certainly not the only way. What should be done to inspire more young people to get involved in the agricultural value chain? Who should drive these initiatives? And what will the results look like if we succeed?
When most people think about agriculture, they obviously think about primary agriculture only, about farming. And yes, there are high barriers to entry. Typically, a lot of the young farmers entering the market would have family or a traditional background in farming. But that's not necessary, and it isn't always the case. I think what a lot of people don't realize is how technologically driven agriculture is, and there personally I think the youth has got an inherent advantage in uptake for technology and understanding of technology.
Future food security relies on making the right investments in the youth today.
It's a growing sector, one of the few sectors of the economy that's growing, which inevitably is going to offer opportunities. Aside from primary agriculture, of course, agribusiness provides a significant chance for young professionals to apply their trade and into the sector. There is continuously almost this war for talent taking place between agribusinesses to get the best talent in rural areas.
As a young person, I'm very excited to be part of agriculture.
It is always energizing to have a conversation in agriculture involving young people, because these are the people of tomorrow. We've explored a number of topics, and I'm hoping that you take these in and we could be able to utilize them even more effectively beyond the NAMPU conversations that we're having today.
Good morning, everybody, and isn't it lekker to be back on NAMPU again, to walk and talk and just greet people. And I think, when I left here on Tuesday, I felt that my emotional tank has been filled, and I think this is what we need to go ahead with all the challenges. And now for the new generation, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to just share something, how did we get so grey, and what are the things that we've learned along the way. So it is really a privilege for me, and thank you to the teams to put all these conversations together so that we can take the debate forward. And it's also good to see how our country has maintained its food security status. And part of it is to keep on changing, to keep on taking on all these challenges. And this is what agriculture is doing so well at the moment. But for that, we also need the next generation. And I want to share a few things from the typical Africa continent with you, to just help you to think about the future and how do we go and take it forward. Where I want to start is in 2010. Now, I think most of you were born there. It was the World Cup soccer here in South Africa. And I think it was about 2 weeks before the event actually took off, there was this ad on SABC of this young African woman shouting in the valley, "Kinako, Kinako." Now, Kinako means it is time, there's no date. Now, it was time for the people to come. Now, I want to use that Kinako for you as a younger generation to really start thinking about it is time for you to step up. And what I want to use is the typical story from the wildebeest migration in Africa. And this is something that we see a lot on the television, and we think a lot about this, but there's actually a lot of deep things that we can take forward, and I want to use this so that you can remember these sort of things. Now, the first thing is, if you look at this picture, you can see the dry grass. And the dry grass is the past that we are dealing with. And the dry grass, you can see there's some grass called Eskom there. It's really a bad one, that one. You don't want to digest that. There's one called apartheid. We want to move away from that because it is going to kill you when you eat it. It is not good. There's some grass called corruption. We also have to start moving away from that. And this is what the wildebeest realize. It is time for them to move on because they can't sustain themselves. There's bad growth, there's droughts, there's even floods this year that we've experienced in the agricultural sector. And there's even things like affirmative action that we have to start leaving behind and say, but I want to find a new future, and I want to have to start crossing this river. Now, you would remember now, when it is time, you will find these old bulls, hulle staan hier onder die boom, say, resistance to change. We don't want to move. We don't want to go through the river. It's lekker where we are. Now, the lions that are staying on this side of the river, they just love those old bulls. They might be not so tender and nice when they eat them, but they're going to get killed because it is not sustainable to stay where we are. And this is what is so fantastic about agriculture. We keep on renewing ourselves. If you walk outside here, you will find the new technology and new people coming in with new ideas. And this is why we need you to become a new grain trader or a new auctioneer selling cattle, or even these nerds doing the wiskunde and all these arithmetics and stuff. Come and write us new algorithms. We need it for the drones so that we don't have to spray everything on the chemicals that we use in the agriculture to save money. You've heard how the fertilizer cost has gone up. We need some new ideas how to grow and how to sustain ourselves as a country. But for that, we can't cling onto the past. We need to renew ourselves and move through the river. So I want to move on to the next picture. And I love this picture. Can you see that young bull there jumping? Julle sy maat hom nooit geleer van jy duikie in 'n swembad waar die water, wat jy nie weet hoe diep is die water nie. He's got no idea what he's doing. He's got no idea how deep it is. I don't think he's got even an idea where he's going. But he's jumping because there's something inside of him that says it is time to move on. And I want to encourage you young people now. Take courage and start jumping. And yes, we need faith. Now, you need a lot of faith in agriculture because there's going to be tough days. But we can't stay this side. So my story today to you is, it is time for you to step up. Don't let people tell you you're too young. Look at this guy. He was still studying when I met him for the first time. I said, Wandile Klokwan, kom werk hier by Graan Suid-Afrika. Let's start and teach him what it is about to help a country to sustain ourselves in terms of the economy and food security. And this is why South Africa is probably the only country on the African continent, in any case in Sub-Sahara, that is a food secure country. We can produce enough for ourselves. We're growing our exports. It is going very positively with the sector. And it's because of people that's got the faith to start jump and to start moving in the right direction. The next slide that I've got here is, yes, it's going to be a strong current. Those of us who have been, and you can ask these other people with even less hair than me, there's going to be a current. It's going to be deep. It's going to be tough. We've gone through the river quite a couple of times now. But the thing is, you won't get to the other side if you don't get your feet wet. And I want to challenge you. I think it was Winston Churchill who said, success is if you keep your enthusiasm whilst you keep on failing. This is when you achieve success. So don't let people, Facebook you up and Instagram you up that everything needs to be 100% perfect and nobody makes mistakes. As is sulke mense nie, man. Get on with it. Start failing, but learn from it and then move on and ask people advice. And this is a very important aspect that I want to encourage you to get a mentor or get a few mentors. I was at a very young age, start getting involved in the sector. And I got a few mentors. And I mean, I've got even 2 of them are still today the mentors that I will phone and say, all right, Russia is going into Ukraine. What do you think is going to happen? The one chap is like 72 years old. He sent me like 8 pages of his thoughts on what I think should happen. And, get the fertilizer people together and ask the wheat millers whether there's enough wheat in the country and, audit and all those sort of things. And it's very good advice that I'm getting from them. So I want to encourage you, get into the water, don't worry about the current, get moving, fall in behind something. And one thing that I've used this picture quite a couple of times, so one thing I realized is, have you seen the very front Wildebeest? It's the one with the short horn. He's 1 year old. He's one of the youngest there. And he's leading the pack across the river. So don't think that because you're young, you can't engage and get into the thing. And then I believe that once you start showing the trend there, the people will follow. And don't be scared. In agriculture, we find new trends and new land that we have to plow and things to do, new products. If I see how some of these new berry products are growing and the exports of those products. 10, 15 years ago, it was mielies geplant and vleis gemaak. I mean, and there was a few guys who planted a few trees. Look at how the citrus industry has grown and expanded. And it's because of young people. I mean, if I look at an institution like BFAP employing young people to help us to understand our economic base better and to make better policy decisions and to advise government on what is it that the sector needs. So for young people, remember, agriculture is not just a boer. We need the farmers. Don't make that mistake. But the traders, the people managing the food science side of things there, we want to make sure that the food is safe that we provide to our people. There's a lot of careers that you've seen on the video specifically. Yes, that's not without risk. But I want to say today, get faith, get courage. This is what makes this country great. People with courage that took decisions way back, even in the Groot Trek days, people who took courage to do that. You know, people who took courage to say that we can't continue the way we did in the old South Africa. People that take courage today to say, what is it that we need to change? We can't continue this path of destruction, of corruption. It is killing our nation. So all these type of things are the risks that we have to take, and that we have to be brave to make the decisions around that. So there's a lot of, as I said, some of people standing on this side of the river and say, there's too many crocodiles here, I'm not going to cross. But you're going to die in any case on this side, so you might as well take the chance and move forward specifically. And then, where are we aiming at? We're aiming at the greener pastures on the other side. And as agriculture, we know that the grass is greener on that side because it's raining that side. It is raining season. And this is the future that we're looking at, and we are trusting the Lord for good rains and a good sector going forward, because, as we said in the beginning, you have to eat 3 times a day. And I think maybe, Wandile, we need to start a campaign saying we need to eat 4 times a day and we will increase our production and the consumption. But let's not go there, then we're obese again and all these sort of nonsense. So the thing that I want to say is, let's start, you know, this is what leaders do. They show the picture of a better future to other people so that they can get courage to get into the river and to cross it and to become on the other side. Why? Because the cows have to calve that side, and the new generation need to be born. Otherwise, the wildebeest population will not sustain themselves. If they stay on that side and they get the calves on that side, gaan die hyenas vir hulle vreet, and they're not going to have green grass to live from. So please, younger generation, take courage. Help us as a country and as agriculture sector to get through the river so that we can find this new future where there's new generation coming and that can resolve some of the problems so that we can sustain ourselves as a sector specifically. I want to conclude with something that I've watched this week in a training thing that I trained myself in exhortation, aanmoediging, bemoediging, to encourage people. So I was listening to this lady, and she explained she went to the Paralympics in Atlanta way back. And I have to make a few demonstrations here. Now, and the thing that she described to us was the long jump for the blind. Okay, so you can just see immediately, here's a big challenge ahead. So this coach takes this athlete and he puts him there, you know, sort of where he have to start. And then the coach run and he go and stand across at the sand pit there. And nou moet jy weet wat gaan nou gebeur. Nou watch hy, and hy sê, ha, ha, ha. And then the athlete stands like this. They say, ha, ha, ha. And they go, ha, ha, ha. Go like this, ha. All right, now the guy's got some direction where he need to run towards. And then the athlete starts, you know, the tricks at Lamar, it's some moves, and then the coach says, hi! Say, ha, a little bit small adjustment there. All right, and then say, all right, now. And then begin hy. He says, and the guy starts running, and he shows sort of with the tone of his voice where he needs to take off, and he says, wah! And then the guy jumps there. Now, sometimes they miss the line, and sometimes they miss the pit. It could be very bad, and you can run into your coach if you jump too late. What's the lesson? If you listen to the pavilion, you might not end up in the pit. So my lesson today to you is get a coach. Make sure that you hear from the Lord. What is it that you need to do? What is the career that you have to follow? What are the big decisions? When I was the CEO of Grain South Africa, you know, there's all these difficult issues that we have to deal with. And I had to go and sit down with my coach and say, listen, what is it that I can do? What is it that I can do to help that mama sitting in KZN today that hasn't got food for her children? And I tried in my office and with all the links and the networks and whatever we do to see if we can do and achieve something like this. This guy was helping us a lot in the Eastern Cape, still today, to help new farmers to come from 1 ton a hectare to 7 tons a hectare, which is the potential of the land. And that changed people's lives. And this is where we are at in agriculture. We want to change people's lives. So find out, what is your pit? Don't run to the pavilion. Don't listen too much. Julle moet nie so baie Facebook hierdie kinders nie. There's pictures there that's unrealistic. And you try to live up to that and you feel you're a failure. You're not a failure. Start failing and failing forward, but learn from it. Don't just stick to that. So to the next generation, you know, about 5 years ago we said agriculture is not sexy enough. Yes, but vandag it's sexy enough. There's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of opportunities for you. So please engage, enjoy what these guys are going to tell you and explain to you. They've already put their feet in the water. And you can follow them as young people and find the way forward. Thank you very much.
Mr. de Villiers, thank you so very much for that insight. Really helpful in joining us with the next segment that we are beginning. And I think what I'm taking from that is the need to have a mentor so that whatever risks that you get to take, they are well informed, not only by knowledge, but even many years of deep reflection about how to do that. And also the fact that Kinago, it's time for young people to really take the steps forward. And I think these guys and many people that are joining us online are taking that to heart, and we really appreciate that. And colleagues, good morning again. My name is Wandile Sihlobo. I am Chief Economist at the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa at AgBiz. And I started my career at Grain SA, which is where Mr. de Villiers makes the point, nearly about a decade ago. And at the time when we had the Nation in Conversation, you heard the chairman speaking about that, the chairman of AgBiz, Mr. Francois Strydom. He makes the point that this conversation is nearly also about 10 years ago. There was a segment at the time that reflected on the young people. And the core questions we were having then was to say, how do we make this sector more attractive to have more young people getting in? And I think to the point that Mr. de Villiers ends with, if you look around the hall here and you walk around Nampo, you look around, you go to any farmer's day, you get into social media, you will see that agriculture has no sexiness problem. We are really one of those attractive sectors that young people have actually taken their foot forward. And I think now that we need in today's conversation to pivot to a little bit a slightly different direction, which is of how do we make sure that this sector continues to grow so that in the future there are young people that participate in an exciting and a profitable sector. And I think that conversation also needs to be anchored to the core problems of South Africa. Because as a country, we are facing about 3 major problems. It's the higher unemployment, it's the inequality, and it's a slow growth. And the core thing is to say then the energy of these young people that are taking risk to jump, as Mr. de Villiers was showing in one of the slides. How do they do that in a way that is growing the sector? And that's the theme of our conversation today, which is the future of agriculture, a new generation. And I want to begin starting on my side. And in fact, I have a good panel in here because the young people that you see outside, you're also seeing them in the stage. But in the stage, it's not just the young people that are interested in getting in the sector, but these are people that are also in the forefront of what they are doing. Next to me, for example, on my right is Dr. Tracy Davies, who is one of the leading voices in agricultural economics and also in the policy side, working with the Bureau for Food and Agricultural Policy. And next to Tracy on the panel, it's Mr. Caridas Chincholo, and Caridas is co-founder and CEO of Kula, which is, again, to the agri-technology point, one of the important agricultural technology companies that is coming up, Kula Ecosystem. You can check that online on your App Store or your Google Play. They provide a market space for farmers and the buyers, exciting space which shows us the value of technology. Next to Caritas, we have Mr. Jeremiah Matebula, who's one of the youngest vice chairmen at Grain SA, and is also at the forefront not only of the grain industry, but also within the livestock sector. And over the past decade, we've watched with admiration Jeremiah's business growing. And next to Jeremiah is Dr. Johnny van der Merwe, who's managing director at AMT and also a lecturer at Northwest University. I've known Johnny also for over a decade when we were still students, and we've watched his growth and influence and contribution to the sector, which shows again the point that the young people are at the forefront. At the end there we have Snelly Zufakade, who farms in one of the difficult areas in South Africa, which is underdeveloped when we think about agriculture, the Transkei region of the Eastern Cape. And we know you're busy, you're coming from far, Snelly, and we're thankful that all of you could be able to make the time to join us. Now to the business of the day. Tracy, last week, there were all of these plans that were launched, the Agricultural Master Plan, which is exciting, and I think it gives us a room to what Mr. de Villiers was talking about, of saying how do we grow the sector and keeping it interesting and young people being involved. And before the master plan, we had the NDP, we had Operation Pakisa, and many other plans that are there. And now my question to you as one of the researchers in the space, are we now having enough plans that are out there, or is there still a room for you young researchers, yourself and Johnny, to contribute in thinking and elevating the pitch of our imagination about where we could take the sector forward? If your question is the first point of saying we have enough plans, in the implementation phase, how do we see young people playing into that?
Okay, loaded question right up front.
I know.
So I think maybe let's just start principally. I think there's always room for young people to contribute new ideas, to bring new thinking, to add to what we have. But then having said that, I also think, at least in the time that I've been involved in agriculture, we've had a number of plans. You've just mentioned a whole bunch of them. We've just gone through the process with the Agriculture Agro-Processing Master Plan. I think it was a great process. The whole social compact type approach, it was backed by a base of research. It was a very inclusive co-creation type approach. Many people contributed. People such as yourself, young people, made a big contribution to that. So while there's always room for more, I want to say that we've had so many plans and the challenge is not with them. I think we've done well with the plans we've had. We need to get them implemented. I think the master plan has identified a number of key issues. It's very clear. It also is just a starting point. So, it's initiated a process that we now have to implement it. We have to continue engaging. We have to keep each other accountable. So I think, the youth must come in. They must join that process. They must come with ideas to get the implementation done. If I can just mention a few, I think things like market access, bringing new entrants in. How do we link them into markets? How do we open more export markets? Things like infrastructure, transportation, the situation, the bottlenecks, the delays in our ports. How do we address that? I think the youth has wonderful new ideas and new perspectives, but I also think it's a generation that's grown up in a digital age. They're very comfortable with new technology. They're very inclined to adopt it. How do we harness that technology? How do we, something like the ports, we need obviously massive investment to expand capacity, but there's also a lot to gain just through efficiency. How can we use technology to make that more efficient? We have this abundance of data. How can we plan better for the volumes coming in at different times? And how can we really get those efficiency gains as a first step? Let's get a few very practical, very actionable steps, and let's start with those, and then we can roll on and add the new ideas to them.
All right. We learn after implementing and seeing what the issues are. And I think that links us well to the next question. Perhaps maybe we could bring you, Caritas, into conversation here. You are sitting in a unique space than anyone who's in this room, which is the agricultural technology space, which is where Kula and many of your colleagues are participating in. When we think about growth, expansion, efficiencies that Tracy is talking about, How are you seeing that space of growth from an agri-tech perspective? What are some of the things that you guys are discussing when you look at South Africa's ag?
Awesome. I think loaded question for me as well. But a couple of ways to tackle it. I think there's a big misconception that, or there was a big misconception that agriculture is not sexy enough. I think the issue is not so much about making it sexy, but rather building a solid business case, especially for new entrants. You know, I think young people are not interested in the pretty pictures of agriculture. I think they're not interested in Instagramifying agriculture, but rather it's about building a business case for agriculture, especially for new entrants. And I think technology can really play a key role, especially for new entrants, in terms of building a really solid business case, particularly for new entrants that are coming in. I think a good example that I always make from a tech perspective, if you look at what Uber did for the cab industry. You know, the cab industry is not an exciting industry off the bat. You know, it's a very dull and boring industry, but Uber kind of said to you, you know, you can get a Toyota Corolla on account, you're going to pay 4,000, 5,000 Rand for that Corolla, but then if you put it on Uber, it's going to make you 30,000 Rand, right? All of a sudden, a very boring and dull industry becomes very interesting, and then you begin to get new entrants. You know, you look at what Airbnb did for your back room. You know, you have a back room that you're not using, and you know, there's this big fear that why would you let a stranger that you don't know live in your house? But they built a business case with your back room, your spare room, or your house that you're not using. And I think our role from an agri-tech perspective is really to build that business case. I think one of the key issues in agriculture for me is that it's very connection-based, or it's very much who you know, which makes it very difficult. There's no clearly defined route in terms of I'm going to start here, then I'm going to move here, and then I'm going to move here. You know, a lot of the success you get in agriculture, there's a lot of strokes of lightning that must kind of happen, and a lot of lucky moments. And I think for as long as the industry, or success in the industry is defined by timing, lucky moments, and connections, it's not going to grow. We're not going to get a lot of young people in. So we need to begin to make the business case make sense from the start to the end, to say, if you buy that Toyota Corolla and then you got 4,000 or 6,000 with insurance, you put it on Uber, it's going to make you 30,000 Rand. If we can make it that clear to young people, it's going to have a big impact from an entrance perspective. And I think one of the other issues is that we often speak about agriculture in one sense. We say South African agriculture, but actually there's two agricultures in South Africa. You know, there's the more established commercial side, you know, and you've got the more less established emerging side, right? And we often talk about the industry in a blanket perspective, but the two sides kind of require very different solutions. You know, we rolled out an input marketplace last year, and we were able to deliver to our commercial farmer clients quite easily because the distribution points are there. But our C1 or more emerging farmers, the distribution points are too far. You know, yes, they ordered on our app, but they have to drive 70 kilometers to go pick that up. They have to drive 50 kilometers, and we had to look at introducing some sort of a kiosk model where we could get closer to where they are. So in a nutshell, our role from a tech perspective is to work towards building a business case so that as a new entrant, you know where to start, what the process looks like from start to finish, and demystifying that and removing the lightnings and strokes of luck that you need to be successful in agriculture.
Yeah. Caritas, you raised two important stuff, joining hands and building one unanimous South Africa in agriculture and not have two agricultures. And you also talk about the issue of connections. I'm going to come back to the latter point, but I want to bring in Snelizwi as one of the new entrant farmers who has been able to succeed. And I want to know if, do you have connections also? He can tell us on that. But Snelizwi, I mean, as a young farmer in the sector, you've managed to do well. Especially, I know the area that you're farming on, there's no agricultural infrastructure and all of those. Of course, benefiting a lot from the experience of Grain SA and the others. But I want to just move us in, take us in to say, what are some of the approaches that you think some young person who's watching us online now, or who is here with us in the audience looking into entering the sector, what are those key things that they have to know so that they can follow the right approach and not spend many time running around? Yes.
No, thanks, Wendy. And I think for me, you know, my story was just around pretty much hard work. You had to study. I had the fortunate opportunity to actually get academics, and I think, education plays a big role. The unfortunate part is that our education system, and I'll speak from my experience, you're educated enough to understand the vocab of agriculture, but you don't understand how to make sure you get 2 tons of maize per hectare. The theoretical part is good and well in our system, which is fine. The minute you get out there, as Kula says, in terms of from his experience, the lightning strikes are something that you have to understand. And when that little wildebeest is jumping, that is exactly me about 3 years ago. The position is my approach has been in terms of, yes, you unfortunately coming into a system that is around networks, who but you have to position yourself to be an attractive youngster to be supported. So, you have to do the hard yards of not going home on holidays and working on farms. That's how I started. You have to understand the fact that, you're not going to be waking up at 8 o'clock and sleeping at 5 o'clock. That kind of experience in terms of on-farm experience was something that, catapulted my understanding quite quickly. To be farming now in Rocky Park, which is my business at the moment, 1,400 hectares under production, it's particularly great. But to get to that point, I've got a mentor. I work with individuals with regards to input suppliers. Outside my commercial business, I'm also heavily involved in rural development. Experience that I got when I was still at Grain SA. I've left Grain SA now, but I work closely with those particular partners. And the work that we're doing in the province is just to simply understand the fact that there has to be a lenient funding structure. The current structure is asking for collateral. You don't have collateral when you're graduating your first degree. Where are you going to get collateral from besides you've only got IP, which is in between your ears. And then the other thing is, in terms of lenient funding, you have to combine that with maybe patient funding, or have a situation of surrounding yourself as a youngster with people that have been in the business and know the business and understand from an experience perspective the type of work to get production going. So it is not an easy road, but it's a road nonetheless that has got a lot of youth. And the last part that I've experienced is that in actual fact, we as young people aren't looking for freebies. It's not a freebie exercise. And I'll take you back to Eastern Cape. I know we're mentoring about just under 2,000 farmers in terms of grain production in the province. Those guys aren't looking for freebies. People are willing to pay for good quality service. People are willing to put money down for good quality access in terms of inputs and mentoring. So it's a situation where if the system of an agricultural sector can understand that in actual fact, indeed, the emerging market or developing market, it's all about leniency. Once you start getting leniency, you get people who are participating. And that from that position, you can then build collateral, then build security. And I think from my experience, that's how I've got to where I am. It's not easy, let me tell you. And, when you get a hailstorm in May, then you understand that climate change is on your door. So all of those intricacies, when you're jumping into those mucky waters, you must just have the courage to swim, because the tides are quite heavy sometimes. But it's very enjoyable in terms of the results, because it is very possible to be greener on the other side.
Yeah. You're raising here a couple of points, important points. Financing, sustainability, and I'm going to want to come back to the point of sustainability. But I want to bring in you, Johnny. I mean, you're sitting in a unique space. You are in research. You are teaching. Snelizwe talks about education and the need for that to filter through. But where you're sitting, when you think about growth and expansion in agricultural sector and the knowledge that you impact to the young people, as well as on the consultations that you have with private businesses, what are some of the key things that you are picking up that you say, if we do X, Y, Z, we begin to see this inclusive growth and expansion of the sector?
Yes, thank you, Mandela. I really want to exemplify, just add on to what he and Yanni also said. And I've been through this. I'm currently in the air jumping to the water at the moment, so I feel where you are at that moment. So you really need to take those risks. And I've listened to a presentation on TED Talk or something, so I think you must always continue to learn. But this person specifically said, if something is worth doing, it's worth doing bad the first time. And I think all of us sitting here has done that. We took the jump, and we're currently swimming, and it's sometimes not going as planned, but it's worth doing bad the first time and learning from this. So actually what's happening, what's the message out of this is, start doing something, and to Tracy's point, start implementing these plans. We can't just talk to each other, start doing stuff. And that's basically what I've done with AMT. We've done we've moved into a bit of a ag space with enterprise budgets and stuff like that. And at some point in time, you just need to stop and say, okay, I need to jump now, I need to start implementing this stuff, and I need to go forward. And really, I think that is the main point. And getting education it's nice, it's good enough, but it's not good enough, but it's a good starting point. But starting going to get practical experience as well, going to farms, doing, and it's not only on the farm, it's not only production, primary production. We've got every discipline at the university that we're currently offering. There's space in the agricultural sector for that specific discipline. You just need to be, you just need to be creative in your process of how to implement this. Take a look from the other side and maybe get creative approaches to different problems. And that's where the youth is especially really beneficial to this industry. We've talked to a lot of, with a job, we had a job colloquium at the university, and we talked to all the industry role players. And the main theme that came out, and the message that came to the students going into the sector, is start engaging with people and start getting experience in the industry. And I think you, Carita, said as well, it's a lot of linkages. The agricultural industry, there's a lot of linkages. It's about who you know, and so start learning to know people, getting yourself out there, and really be the first one to do that. And I think you yourself, that's why you're so successful today. You put yourself out there and you continue to learn on each day. So I think that's a really main thing that we need to do. A practical solution maybe is, and I always look into America, and they're probably about 5 to 10 years before us in terms of their development. And I really like the farm to fork idea, and our rural communities really need to grow. So as an agricultural, or if you're a primary producer, start investing into your local communities. And then you can create demand for your own products, because those local communities can eat as well. An interesting thing that I read is the restaurant industry somewhere in Chicago, America, I'm not sure where, they doubled the wages of all the waiters in the street, or the industry in that specific area. And the guy said, okay, but it's negatively going to impact our profit and everything. And about 2-3 years later, all those people were the clients of the restaurant. So the restaurant industry grew in any case. So we need to protect our consumers. We need to protect our local communities as well. And I think with that, we can get, if the local communities can become more inclusive, schools can start up growing again, then we can get more people going back to the rural communities, and we can grow.
Okay. Now, Johnny, introducing a couple of points and an accusation that I have connections. I don't. Jeremiah, I want to bring you in here because all of the points that are coming in are important. Snellizu talks about the financing. Johnny comes back to the issue of having mentors and knowing some people and acquiring a bit of education. But I want to really ask, on this financing point, is the issue around the financing industry which needs to somewhat be flexible on some of its terms, or are young people that are trying to get to agriculture not funding ready? Which part do we do, and how are you seeing that? And you can dig into your experience because you've grown enormously over the past decade in the sector.
Thank you, Wandile, and good morning. I think you are, the guys have touched the most important point here, and I would like to say the time is now, as Yanni was saying, for us to jump in and to make our future great. What is important for me, before I answer your question, in order for the country and to move forward, we need to get the center to hold. How do we do that? It's important that we have developing farmers and commercial farmers coming together. We need to have integrated farming community. And we've got the system that is there in place. So the new entrants, they just need to plug in on what is there already. We don't need to start new systems. Coming to your point in terms of the financing part of it, the challenges are there. And the challenge is that you go to the financial system or the banking system that we have at the moment. It needs you to have collateral, either for growth, for expansion, and all of that. And most of our developing farmers, like myself and most of them that are out there, they are leasing land from the state. And if you lease the land, you go to the system, you need to have collateral, and that's access to finance. It becomes a challenge because you don't have title deed of that land, and the system needs you to have that. So the other issue is the issue of title deed. It's becoming a problem for the farmers in order to access finance. So although there are those challenges, we still need to, we're working together as Grain South Africa. We are jumping in to see how do we get the developing farmers into the system. And I'm happy to say we are positively on our way to say we need to commercialize the emerging sector, so that we get more of a proven case that is out there, and for the youth that wants to come in to see that actually there's a lot of things that can be done within the sector. And I'm very positive where I'm sitting now within the structure of Grain South Africa, in that we are actually, all of us, black and white, pulling together and plugging in, and we are integrating the two sectors. We don't want to have this diversification, which is not going to put us into the future. As these wildebeest are crossing there, we're going to cross as a mass to the future. So that's the plan. It's not something that we're still thinking of. There's a green light that's the way that we need to go. And definitely when the center holds, we're going to resolve all the other challenges that the farming sector is facing.
Important points, Jeremiah. Thanks for that. The center should hold. There's progress underway. All of those are promising. Caritas, I want you to assist us a little bit here. Caritas is friends with a couple of bankers in his work at Kula. What are you doing right in as far as the financing that the agricultural colleagues can pretty much learn from you as the ag technology? Is there something that they can do? Put aside the collateral issues, but what other strategies?
I think, again, there's different ways of tackling that question. But I think for me, as a new person in the industry, the overarching problem, like I said, a lot of things are mystified, and there's a big need to demystify the industry, right? I think there's a lot of unicorns in the industry, like I said. And the thing about unicorns is that unicorns are not real. We need to demystify it and make it very clear, how to move from one step all the way to the end, right? And I think that's the role that Agritech needs to play. From a financing perspective, I think there's a big onus on the banking sector to actually come to the party in terms of looking at new financing models, right? I think the old financing model of collateral and whatnot becomes somewhat, I guess, exclusionary, you know what I mean? Because as my brother was sharing here about the instance of, a lot of the farmers sit with land that is leased, and then they're expected to grow their farms, and when they go to the bank says, I need some form of collateral, and the farmer can't gain any access, So I think from a banking sector, the bankers that we've been working with, we're looking at new models where you can actually use market, where we can say to the bankers to say, look, this is a farmer that's working with us within the Kula ecosystem. This is the buyer that's actually going to buy from them. This is, maybe we want to finance them to get a global gap certificate or a local gap certificate, and then we will assist them to ensure that they actually have market to sell their products, and then the banker can then kind of use that as an alternative model to say, okay, there's some certainty in terms of where the farmer is actually going to sell their products at the end of the day, and then kind of use that as an alternative way of sort of financing. So I think on the banking side, there's a big need to come to the party in terms of looking at alternative model, because the collateral model is reinforcing something that is, I think, quite a big issue for me in the industry, where if you look at the numbers, it'll tell you that there's X million farmers or 1 point whatever million farmers, all farmers considered, but then the small farmers stay small, and the big farmers kind of stay big, right? And then if you look at the numbers on the commercial side, the number of commercial farmers is actually decreasing over time, right? But the small guys are actually not graduating from one stage over to the next stage, because the financing model is only working for the big guys who are all decreasing as well over time. So I think there's a big need on the banking side to actually begin looking at alternative financing models. And I think one thing that we've been able to do for the banks that we've been working with is actually using the data that we generate on our platform, because we've got a good sense of what the farmer is buying on the input side, but also a good sense of what the farmer is selling and what contracts the farmer has, and then begin at looking at alternative financing model. But the current financing models, as it stands, kind of reinforce the norm that the big stay big and kind of the small stay small. Then one of the small will make it over, and then we make them a unicorn and we say, okay, everything is okay in the system because this one guy was able to jump over. But we need to build, we need to demystify it, and build an industry where you don't have unicorn successes, where the system allows for the small guys to actually graduate over time from where they are to the next stage.
I think there's already pathways then, Caritas, with all of the data and things that you're generating are some of the things that can be replicated on seeing how the progress of that happens. And Tracy, maybe you can also add here, you look at things as an economist largely more on a macro perspective. From a policy perspective, looking at this issue of financing, but also looking at the issue of the two agricultures that we are beginning to talk about, but keeping it within the agriculture of the future. What are some of the key themes that you think perhaps maybe from a policy side needs to be tweaked or be a key interest?
Yeah, I mean, I think financing is obviously a big one. We've talked a lot about there's two sides to the sector, but therein lies exactly the difficulty, right? Because you have your big farmers getting bigger, less of them, but farming bigger, and you sort of, it's very capital intensive, it uses top technology, but that's expensive, right? So you need sort of a critical mass to really get into that space. And then you have small farmers that are wanting to grow, but don't always have the collateral, and there's a big bridge in between. There's a big gap that you need to jump over to get from that small farmer to that point where you have all that, and where you're at this critical mass to really start benefiting from that technology. So I think we've, as Caritas said rightly, we've really just got to come with innovative ways to get people across that gap. I think we've got to create a pathway. Be it in JVs and joint ventures, I don't know, be it in value chain finance. I think there's a lot to be said for what you described. There's also a lot to be said for contracting arrangements. Those are pathways that we have seen in some industries. You link someone to market, and within that value chain, you can use other things for collateral as well, not just land, which you're not always the owner of. So I think we've just got to, we've got to cast the net very wide, look very broadly, and come with very innovative solutions to bridge that gap.
Yeah. No, I was actually pushing that, Tracy, because Mr. de Villiers encouraged us to think broadly on a risk perspective. So I think young people can bring in some new innovative way. Yes, there are standard problems of South Africa that we know, but the hope is always that young people bring new perspective and new energies, and I think that's some of the key things that we need to be thinking about. Jeremiah, we have a problem in South Africa. I talked about unemployment. One can see them as a burden, or you can choose to see them as a youth dividend of saying, how do you bring them in to be as productive and as helpful in growing the sector forward, and at the same time as opening up job opportunities. How do you think about that problem from where you sit as a farmer and what you can do in helping us reduce unemployment?
That's a difficult one, but...
You're a business owner, Jeremiah.
I think, thanks, Wandile. I think what is most important is that job creation is so important, and agriculture is putting more... there's a lot of opportunities that are there, and I think it's also employing a lot of people in the sector. And I think it's important that we also bring a government involved into the sector so that if there's any red tape that brings a barrier into creating more job opportunities for the youth that are coming in there. So I think what is most important, a program like this, they assist a lot also to expose the opportunities to the youth, and events like NAMBO is also creating a lot of exposure and information to the community out there. But it's important, as I said, to bring the sector and government to assist in terms of what can we do better to create more opportunities. Because if you look at the input cost, it's becoming a serious challenge. You could see now with the Ukraine and Russia issues, things just shoot to the roof. And you remember you got fixed costs that are there, and we need to accommodate those. And so I think government need to also play part. We also got to play part on our side. We do employ people, and we can't keep doing that in our own sector without getting other stakeholders involved, like our government, to make sure that we create the space enough to get more people, employed. Because as I said, the biggest issue that we have now is the skyrocketing input cost. So if we can get that down, I don't know how, but it's a challenge at the moment. But we need to get a way out so that we make sure that all people get employed. Because if you've got high unemployment, there's a lot of issues and challenges that the country will face. So we are all in it. It's not only the sector, but we are all in it. All stakeholders need to get involved, especially on this one. The agricultural sector and government need to come in so that we can assist each other in terms of making sure that more people get employed.
No, absolutely, Jeremiah. I think you are bringing that back to the master plan where you say everybody is already sitting there, government, business, farmer association. How do we take that forward? Snelizwe, are you holding on a Milton Friedman's thinking of saying the business of business is business? Or are you thinking about job opportunities? If you do, how are you seeing that? I mean, you are, in our province, it's one of the top three that is, when you think about high levels of poverty, it's Eastern Cape, KZN and Limpopo. Unemployment is Limpopo, KZN and Eastern Cape. How do you see the sector that you are in playing part on there, and practically what are some of the strategies that you've seen?
Yeah, no, so I think it boils down to opportunity, and by that I mean to say, it goes back to the point that I made. As a youngster coming in, you must have the mindset of, it's not about money, more particularly in the first half. Experience is important, exposure is important. And in that particular travel, you will always position yourself for good opportunity. And in this instance, it could be, employment, us as farmers down there, or like what we're doing down there as a farming community, and all the other guys. It's all about giving, youngsters internship opportunities, farm visit opportunities when they're doing their practical courses. You must open up your farm to the youngsters that are just yearning for the exposure. I think in that particular instance, you'll probably get a lot more interest. And like I say, the candidate must be positioned, or position him or herself to understand that it's not going to be, 15,000 rand in your pocket from day one. You earn that particular stride by having the hard yards, being exposed to the production, being exposed to the marketing, and it's all a learning curve combined with the education that you would have received for the last degree or two. So I think going up the value chain, and I'm obviously a primary producer, but moving up the value chain, there's bigger and better opportunities. And I think us as farmers coming through, looking to streamline the business, in that particular streamlining, take 2 or 3 graduates in that line, put them through your system. And that's the kind of exposure and opportunity I'm talking about. And I think from there we'll start seeing a bit of a, retract in terms of that percentage, because it's getting brutal in terms of the Eastern Cape province, really. 43%, give or take, of that particular, unemployment is just young people. So I think it's all about the opportunity. And, again, some people aren't office ready. Those who are in production, leniency, support them, subsidies. We're not talking new models here. As Jeremiah said, no need to reinvent the wheel necessarily. So I think we must just keep at it what's worked to get the agricultural industry to this particular point in the country. And that was lenient funding, subsidy approach, supporting the farmer from a technical perspective, and finding yourself in the position of from a finance house, understand that it's going to take time to get one or two farmers or 10 farmers over the line. But as Kula, the gentleman from Kula indicates, it's not just Snelizwi. You can get 10, 15 Snelizwi if you're in a position where you just support the correct jockey, but the jockey must always remember he must position himself, or she must position himself to be supportable, if there's such a word. And that, I think, for me is very important, technically and practically, to get the numbers and to close that bridge between established and developing.
Yeah, I mean, you're raising an important point, because South Africa has a high level of unemployment, over 35%. But if you break down the unemployment statistics in South Africa, the young people are disproportionately affected. And if we want agriculture to be seen by the general public as one of those sectors that could be supported from a policy, from a public spending, it has to be seen to be playing an even more active role in assisting in dealing with those problems of South Africa: inequality, unemployment, and slow growth, while still, of course, maintaining the business principles that Jeremiah was alluding to. And in the midst of all of those things, there's also new challenges around sustainability, which you yourself, Snelizwi, spoke about. And Tracy, I want to come back to you around the issues of sustainability. We young people, we're sitting here, how should we be thinking, and what should we be thinking around the sustainability points?
Yeah, so I think agriculture there is in quite a unique position. So I mean, if one thinks sustainability obviously has multiple aspects, but let's start with climate. I think that's that's front and center. There's agriculture is obviously a sector that's very strongly affected by it. It's also a sector that in many instances contributes to emissions. It's also a sector that could reverse a lot of that. So I think we need to. There's very different strategies for different aspects of climate, but obviously, investment into research, into technology to manage to help. If you think of producers that have been in it for a long time, they'll tell you they've been faced with constant climate change over a long period. And I think if there's one thing you can say for agriculture, it's just very good at adapting, and you need to keep adapting. You need to keep adapting your processes, how you approach production, what technologies you use, what research investment into things like seed, things that handle the volatility better. So there's no doubt it's accelerating, but it's also not new. I think we can look to the past, look what has worked. I think from a climate perspective, from bringing people in, you need to find the success stories and you need to amplify them. So I think there's a lot to be said for that.
No, absolutely. And I guess it brings us back to the opening remarks by Yanni, which says, let's not forget some of the lessons of the past that we can take forward. Johnny, young people watching in here, trying to get into agriculture and maybe managing to an extent to get into the production side, but seemingly finding some challenges around the market stuff, which is the things that I usually read about on Twitter and the other things. You sit in the market space, which is a unique and interesting part. What do you tell those people around navigating the demand pool for everything that they are producing, medium, small?
Yes, I think one of the speakers also mentioned it, and I think Yanni mentioned it as well. What we must always remember, we will have ups and downs. We will have seasonal trends in the sector, but we must always remember there will always be demand for the products of the agricultural industry. People need to eat, and we need to continue to produce. It's going to be up and down, and I think what's really important about that is it's to adapt to certain seasons. Every season you need to adapt, and to be able to adapt, you need to have information. You need to have constant, up-to-date information. I know BFAP and they also focus a lot on that, and you need to make your decisions on a constant basis and need to be able to adapt to this changing environments, to changing weather, to the input cost that's going up, and to do your planning. It's the agricultural industry, it's a seasonal product, but it's also a long-term investment that you need to make. So you need to balance this. You need to make adaptations on a year-to-year basis or an annual basis, on a month-to-month basis, but you need to make investments over a 10, 20-year period. So you need to know where you're going in 20 years' time. So that is a really interesting dynamic that you need to take into account, but you need to constantly change the ship that you are going into, and sometimes it takes a long time. But it's, from my perspective, I think just to get back to your question, a young person needs to be adaptable. But I think the most important part is you need to have a love for the industry. You need to have passion for this industry. And that's, I know that's what's driving me at the moment. He also mentioned, my focus, my motto is, I want to make a contribution to whatever I'm doing, to the information sector at this moment time, or to production, and then income or money will be a result of a contribution that you make. So first make a contribution, and then money will be or income, or whatever you want to, the cruiser you're going to buy, whatever you're going to do, that will be a result of a contribution that you can make over a longer term period in time. And agriculture is not a short-term investment. It's a long-term, and you won't make money it's not a quick rich get scheme or whatever. You need to be in it for the long run to make a contribution.
All right. Important points. Nellis, do you agree with him?
I totally agree.
Farm.
Yeah. I totally agree. I can only say, with regards to sustainability, for those that are in as young as we are, I think it's important that, how from a production perspective, tweaking your production practices, regenerative agriculture, conservation agriculture, putting those practices in place now will give, sustainability to your enterprise and to your business 10, 15 years from now. So I think, it's our duty as well as primary producers looking to obviously streamline businesses to make sure that we have production systems in place that other young people, could come into the industry or buy my farm after 50 years. But at least he or she is buying a farm that they are able to expand on and actually grow. But I have to start the work now. So I think from a sustainability perspective, technically, those key things are areas which you need to focus. And in the end, for me, what I've learned is you can forget a cruiser in the first 10 years, in my perspective. But at the same time, the most important thing that you go to sleep at night full and you wake up in the morning and you have breakfast. So what vehicle you're driving, and I think us as young people, our flashy life, the minute you step into this industry, you must kiss it goodbye, because you won't have it for at least 5 to 10 years.
All right. Jeremiah at Grain SA, in the new pool of farmers that are coming in, are you guys teaching them and emphasizing the issues of sustainability? And if you do, what specifics are you guys telling the new entrants?
Thanks, Wandile. I think within Grain SA, there's a pool of mentors that are there, and there's a plan that is in place for the new entrants, for the developing farmers, smallholder farmers. You've got mentors that give you the information and training that the farmers need, in order for the farmers to make informed decision in terms of what cultivar to plant, what fertilizer to apply, and all the precision, all the things that needs to be done in order for the farmer to make a success. In terms of planting, for the farmer to reach, as we have heard from Yanni de Villas, that in the Eastern Cape, you had guys that were producing 1 ton, 2 tons per hectare. Now they are sitting at the capacity of the production of that soil, which is 7 tons per hectare. So
there's a lot of work in.
It's important that those that are within the system, they get the rewards. You see people there, their life changes through the mentorship that is given by Grain South Africa. So it's making a huge impact, and if you do according to what the mentors are doing, that business becomes sustainable, because we don't want to make a mistake, because in farming, once you make a mistake in a season, it will take you another 3 years to correct it. this year is a loss. So that next year you have to make sure that you make the informed decision. So that's what we're trying to assist all the farmers to make sure that the decision that they take is informed, and is informed by what is the practices that is being there in the sector.
I hope then, Jeremiah, even in the schools and the young people that are tuning in online, you guys are able to showcase that information and some of those things so that they can be able to see the opportunities and the better practices. Caritas, this is a unique opportunity. You spoke about people that have connection, and there are some that don't have connections. Some connections are watching you online, some connections are in the audience. And I want you to just, what would you like to see from those people that have been on the sector for quite some time, and they have had a good fortune of being successful in the sector, when they are looking at the young people now who are slightly outside or jumping into the water, what sort of things that they should extend to those young people? What would you say?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, and I think from what we've seen, the most important thing is that for us to get to the other side, it's going to be collaborative, right? It's not going to be just either new entrants or old entrants. I think as a newcomer into the industry, I saw a lot of silos, and I think a lot of our business, we built a business case around that. We built a business case around the fact that, the buyers are on the one side, and the farmers are on the one side, and then the input suppliers are on the one side, and the farmers are on the one side, and the funders are on the one side. I've literally built a business just out of the silos in the industry. But I think even with the progress that we've made the progress because actually the existing players in the industry have actually come to the party, and they've kind of been working with us to kind of collaboratively build, and I always say to all of our farmers and to our buyers, our job is to build the tech. I'm not a farmer, and I'm not going to sit here and say I'm a farmer, nor am I going to say I'm a buyer or an input supplier, but my job is to listen and to build the tech, you know what I mean? And we can't build the tech without understanding what the issues of the farmers are, both on the two, inverted commas, two agricultures. You need to kind of understand what the issues are, and then on the base of what is said, then we build kind of the solution. So I think collaboration is absolutely important. And I think contrary to what the narrative may be out there, the existing players are actually willing to help. So for example, on the input side, there was a big misconception by the small farmers that the big input suppliers don't want to help us. They're not giving us technical advice. They're not delivering their stuff because they only care about the commercial guys. But when you talk to them, they're just saying that the cost to serve is too high. For us to send a technical person who's going to see a farmer who's on a 3 hectare and then only buy 1 drum just doesn't make business sense. Then we were able to come in with the tech by hearing both sides of the equation. So I think collaboration is going to be key. Willing collaboration is going to be key for us to get to where we need to go. And perhaps even from a buyer's perspective, is that tech helps break down a lot of those barriers. It helps break down a lot of those barriers, but we need the collaboration from the industry. And actually the existing players are actually working with us. I think industry associations, input supplier, multiple players have actually been joining hands with us, and we've built our solution based on those voices. So collaboration is everything. The guys on the other side must shout to the wildebeest to say, jump on that rock and that rock so you can get the side, and kind of lay something out so they can cross over. Yeah.
No, then that's fantastic. I hope Mr. de Villiers is here, because he was saying even the nerds should come in and help the sector. So there are nerds in the sector coding on technology and pushing us forward. Snelizwi, and this is a question closing, very succinct for everyone that is in the panel. Think about 50 years down the line from where we're sitting, and everyone very briefly. When you imagine that farmer of the future, what should she look like, and what should she know as she's sitting there in the audience, preparing herself to be that farmer 50, 30 years down the line? Very briefly, what are some of those key things? And that's the question for everyone that I'm going to ask to do that.
Maybe they should start having an oil refinery on that farm, because the diesel price is huge. I think most importantly, 50 years from now, you've got a farmer that's part of an inclusive industry. You've got a farmer that's talking to another farmer wherever. And I think you've got a farmer that's focused, precise with their particular execution, regardless of the land size or usage. You've got a farmer that's got access to input supplies 24/7, in terms of communication. You've got technology that's giving them, a lot of opportunity. So for me, it's all about precision 50 years from now and sustainability.
Precision 50 years to time. Johnny, very quickly.
Yes, I think information will be, of course, hopefully open to all, but I think adding on to him the precision, and I think what we must take into account, and hopefully where we will be in 50 years' time, is that all land within, let's say, South Africa, or hopefully Africa then, must be used to the optimum efficiency. So, because we're the custodians of land, we have a certain responsibility to feed the nation. So we must make sure that all land in South Africa are used as efficiently as possible. And I think hopefully we can use our systems and technology and stuff that we can get to there.
Fantastic. Very quickly, Jeremiah, 30, 50 years, what should the new farmer?
Thanks, Wandile. I'm looking at a farmer that will be passionate about the sector, integrated farming community, and the other thing is make sure that we are informed in terms of what is happening because of the global warming. So we need farmers that will be informed of what to do next because the global warming, the weather is changing all the time.
Excellent. Caritas, very quickly.
A farmer that's well informed, I think most importantly, a farmer that's in a transparent industry, but more than anything, a farmer that is running a sustainable business and actually making a profit because they're not farming for fun only, that is running a sustainable business, making a profit, well informed, and
the agri-tech integrated into that.
And a farmer that is definitely using one of the cooler platforms.
Tracy, as the last word.
So I'll say all of the above. Plus, I think maybe what I can just add is I think even now a farmer has to be a specialist on so many fronts. I mean, you have to be a specialist in production practices, in sustainability, in marketing, in finance. So a broad education on multiple disciplines. I think we're living in a world where it's possible to do that. There's so many sources of information. So to never stop learning and to just, get it from all fronts. I think that's going to be critical. And if you're not sustainable, I think probably you're not there in 50 years' time. So
okay, fantastic. To everyone who has watched, thank you so very much. Hope you benefited from this discussion. And everyone that is in the panel here, they are active online and on social media. You see their names on the screen. You can go to their website, company website, and be able to find out more information. We hope you enjoyed this discussion. Thanks.